Today we're discussing a concept of a huge trade that might make sense involving two highly skilled, highly rated top young players in the NHL. Of course, that's the Montreal Canadiens, Jerard Fagerberg and Kent Johnson of the Blue Jackets. So we also have some more updates from the NHL Global Series in Stockholm, Sweden. More news from the NHL waiver wire. Several news and updates and another major benching in Columbus. Patrick Laine is a healthy scratch today. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we do have a proposed blockbuster deal that could be interesting to think about that I want to talk about here in a little bit. But first, we have some other news to talk about. First up, the NHL Global Series wrapped up quite early this morning for those of us in North America. Obviously, in Europe, it was a bit more of an afternoon affair, but we saw the Minnesota Wild do battle with the Toronto Maple Leafs today. The Leafs, for the second straight day, win, or the second straight time, I should say, not second straight day, and the Wild, for the second straight time, lose. Unfortunately, the Minnesota Wild lost both games in extra time, one to the Sens, one to the Leafs. Today was a little bit more of a offensive affair, a few more goals today, but of course Swedish star William Nylander scores the overtime winner. Certainly played a huge part in the offense today. Continues his streak of consecutive games to start the season with at least 1 point, now at 17, climbing up the history books. He's on an absolute tear, one of the top players in the league, pending UFA. Looking for a major bag of money in the offseason. The longer this goes before he comes to terms with a new deal with the Leafs, assuming that happens, of course, it's just going to mean the more money he's going to command. I guarantee at this point he's asking for money in the Mitch Marner neighborhood of 11 plus million. So, we're going to see where that goes. But ultimately, the Global Series, I think, was very successful. We saw 4 teams go over. We saw the Leafs and Sens both have lots of success. The Minnesota Wild, even though they dropped both games, they did get at least 1 point both times in extra time. The Red Wings, of course, had a loss in regulation and a loss in overtime. So they get themselves a point as well, which isn't great considering the Red Wings have slipped a bit lately. The Senators have caught up to them a lot in the standings, so it's not good in that sense. But a lot of the Swedish players here had a chance to shine and be a big part of their team's success, or at the very least, contribute to their teams. You saw Forsberg, Brandstrom in Ottawa. Of course, Nylander stole the show with the Leafs. Lucas Raymond scored a couple goals for the Red Wings. The Minnesota Wild, had Gustafsson, Eriksson Ek, Brodin, Johansson on display. They all played well. Just an all-around good batch of games and good for the game of hockey. I know Austin Matthews was asked about, other locations he would like to see this type of thing take place in, and he mentioned Mexico City. It's actually an area that's getting some consideration, and we have seen some growth in the game of hockey down in that part of the world, in Mexico. And obviously Austin Matthews is, a player with Mexican heritage, obviously through his mother's side, and it would be he would be the main player to promote and to kind of, put on display down there. So ultimately, Gary Bettman, in a recent interview as well with TSN, even made mention of that being one of the cities that they've looked at, and it could be something that happens as early as next year or the year after. So wouldn't be shocking in the, either 24, 25, 25, 26 seasons if we do see either exhibition games or Global Series affair in Mexico City. Of course, in the Leafs are almost guaranteed to be a part of it. Hard to say exactly who else would go. I would think the Dallas Stars would be a prime team. They apparently have expressed interest in doing games in Mexico before as well. Obviously not far in from the Mexican border in Texas, or the California teams as well would probably be, I would suspect, just geographically speaking, the teams that might resonate the best down there. But we'll see. That would be one of the areas in consideration. Stockholm's hosted on multiple occasions, and it's been a great affair each time, and done extremely well. Now, on to some other NHL news. We have news from the NHL waiver wire today. Yesterday, we had the Red Wings place Austin Czarnik on waivers. He indeed did clear, so he can be reassigned. And today, we had Flyers goaltender Felix Sandstrom be placed on NHL waivers as well. Now, he has not played this season. He's been on injured reserve. He has played a bit in American Hockey League, but to go down on a regular assignment, he does need to clear waivers first. So we'll see. I would suspect that he most likely won't be picked up considering his lack of playing time. You never know, though. We'll find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. A bunch of players have been sent back to the American Hockey League after stints up in the NHL, including the Oilers sending back Raphael Lavoie. The Ottawa Senators returned a bunch. Of course, they brought up a few for their Swedish trip. Matthew Highmore, Tyler Clevin, and Jacob Larson have all been returned to their American Hockey League affiliate. Matt Sogard likely will be as well in coming days. They brought him along. He actually did dressing as a backup against the Wild when they gave the full day off to Jonas Korpisalo, who they said was just had a little minor, I'm not sure what it was, but a minor injury, nothing serious at all, they said. So considering the Sens travel back to North America, which I'm sure they already have, I believe, and don't play till the end of the week, he should be good to go, and Sogard will be returned to the AHL likely here in the short term. They probably just want to make sure that that's all good and taken care of before they proceed with that. We talked about yesterday how Sasha Barkov, the captain of the Panthers, had a knee-on-knee collision in their game against Anaheim. It could be serious, but we don't know the extent of that just yet. All Paul Maurice would say was that he's at the very least going to be missing in action for now. He's going to miss at least a game, and we'll see. They're considering him day-to-day just until they get further evaluation on the injury and see where it goes. They're hoping it's not long-term, and right now it doesn't sound like it could be. I mean, they haven't said a lot, though, but they're hoping at this point that they've possibly dodged a bullet. So we'll see where that goes. Patrik Laine, healthy scratch in Columbus today. Certainly we've seen Pascal Vincent, the new head coach with the Jackets, not afraid to do some tough love, you could say, hold players accountable, and regardless of their contract, their past history, their star power in the league, or what have you, if he doesn't like the way they're playing and they're not contributing enough, they're going to sit. And he kind of talked about the fact that Laine didn't necessarily like this decision, that he thinks he needs to take a break and just take a step back and take a breath and kind of reestablish himself here and kind of go from there. So I don't know. I mean, Laine, I know they've been experimenting with him at center. I don't think that's the way to go. I know Gaudreau has struggled, and we've seen both of them have issues with being sat down for. That's the first time either of them have been a healthy scratch for a whole game, but they have had times for a period, half period where they've sat for an extended time as well on a similar type of reasoning. So as I mentioned before, I don't disagree per se with the methods of Vincent. I just wonder at some point when you have to let these veteran guys who have had a lot of prior success play through their struggles and figure it out. Being a brand new head coach, is he risking kind of losing the room here and creating a toxic environment? That would be my concern, but we'll have to see where this goes. But certainly the Jackets, we know, are struggling. I don't think a lot of us were banking on them being super competitive this year, but I don't think a lot of us thought they'd be as bad as they are either. We also thought some of their top guys like Laine and Gaudreau would be more productive. I believe one of my early season predictions even would be that Laine would have a bounce back campaign and would be closer. I don't know if he's going to hit that 40-goal plateau like he did when he was first entering the league, but he was certainly, I expected him to be a lot closer, at least 30 plus, but right now I think he's got 2. It's not trending well in that direction at all, so we'll see where that goes. Another name to watch on the trade front seems to be Morgan Frost in Philly. Frost is just not getting... He can't do anything right in the eyes of John Tortorella. It's weird. Like, he sat for an extended stretch. I think it was like 6 or 7 games consecutively where he couldn't get back in the lineup. He gets back in, and he doesn't seem to matter what he does. He doesn't have to have a horrible game. Then he comes back out. His most recent scratch, the game he played prior to that, he didn't put up points per se, but he did have a lot of block shots, which I know isn't everything, but still, a lot of players, especially for a guy like Tortorella, who really, appreciates attention to detail, strong defensive play, and just playing the right way, as he says. I thought he'd get a little bit more credit for that type of play, and it'd be at least enough to stay in the lineup. I just don't think he likes him. It's just that simple. He had a breakout season last year, and then he starts the next year as on the outside looking in, basically being like an extra player that's used very sparingly. It's just odd management to me, odd asset management, odd player management when it comes to really taking the next step in their development. It's just bizarre. But I'm not shocked, because when Tortorella doesn't like a player, this kind of behavior from him doesn't shock me at all. But considering how many times this guy's been scratched with baffling reasons, at what point are they going to say, listen, we need to move him? Or at what point is he and his agent going to go to the team and say, listen, we're not putting up with this anymore. You're not going to play me. You need to trade me and give me a chance to go somewhere else. And that's got to be coming soon, you'd think, right? We'll see, but certainly a name to watch on the trade market as teams are looking for a bit of a jolt offensively. His value's not super high, which is not great for the Flyers, but a player that somebody might be able to get for a decent price. Now, the next concept we want to talk about is not a rumor per se from an NHL insider. This was a proposed trade coming from a former NHL employee and current writer for the Hockey News, Rachel Laurie. She also does a lot online, like deals with like analytics and betting and all that kind of stuff. And she, pretty smart gal, knows the game well. And when it comes to nailing down analytical data and really studying players, something she's really strong with, which is what she mainly did when she worked for, I think she's worked for a couple of NHL teams actually. The Canucks was the most recent. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say New Jersey, but I could be wrong on that. I can't remember exactly. Either way, some information she had on Twitter, and this was a while ago. I actually saw this a couple of weeks back, and I was just kind of waiting for the right time to discuss it. And essentially, what the proposed idea was, this started with the Kent Johnson. Now, talking about Columbus players being benched, Kent Johnson's another one. Had a great rookie campaign, had a 40-point season last year, comes into this year, new head coach, can't get in the lineup, and was being benched early on. And then he got demoted to the minors. Now he's playing in the American Hockey League. And it just, I don't know. I understand the accountability. I understand the tough love, teaching them to force them to play the right way. But these are skilled guys. Like, you have to take some, I don't know, kind of letting them play through it and learning as they go to. Something like, I understand like what they're doing, but it's just a little extreme in my opinion. Like this, you don't want to ruin your relationships with your players either, right? And it just kind of got a lot of people talking about, is Johnson going to ask to be moved? Because there was some speculation. I can't 100% confirm that he did ask for that, but there was a lot of talk wondering if he did because of the way that they were treating him early in the campaign. And then she proposed a trade on Twitter, talking about Johnson maybe being a potential trade candidate. If there's teams out there that want to add a young offensive player, he might be a player to watch to possibly be moved this season. Well, and then she suggested, well, maybe they talk to the Montreal Canadiens about Jerard Fagerberg. Fagerberg, as we know, also a very high pick, first overall, in fact, a year apart from Johnson. Johnson was 5th overall in 2020, whereas Jerard Fagerberg, last year's, or actually, no, Johnson was the 5th overall pick a couple of years ago, whereas Fagerberg was the 1st overall pick in 2022. Fagerberg hasn't exactly had a amazing start to his NHL career. I'm quite surprised that they didn't give him some American Hockey League time this year. It just seems like I sometimes wonder if teams are, you get one approach like the Jackets, preaching tough love and accountability and being hard on these guys. And then you got teams like Montreal and how they're handling Fagerberg. And I wonder if they ever get to the point where they figure if they send this player to the AHL, does it admit that maybe they made a mistake and they don't want that to be the case from a reputational standpoint? I don't know. It just makes you wonder, because to me, I think it'd be the best thing for him. I mean, he didn't have a bang-up start to his year last year. It was obvious early to me that he wasn't ready, and the fact that he needed more time to be seasoned and develop really shouldn't be anything to be ashamed of. I mean, he put up like 10 points in 39 games last year. Not exactly, earth-shattering. Starts this year pretty slow as well. Now, I know we've seen a little bit of better play recently, so room for some optimism. They've given him a little bit more top 6 opportunity, which is good in a sense, but I don't know. To me, he still needs time, and there's no need to rush him. With where Montreal is with their development and where their season is, this is supposed to be a year of development and growth. I know they had a decent start to their season. They've kind of come back down to earth a little bit. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I think this is a time where they really focus on the future here. You know, and I don't see them necessarily pulling the trigger on a trade involving Slafkovsky this early. However, though, a guy like Kent Johnson would be pretty intriguing to look at if you ever got to the point where the Columbus Blue Jackets were interested. I mean, ultimately, they're very different types of players. I mean, Slafkovsky is a skilled player as well, but look at the size difference alone. Like, he's huge, right? You know, Slafkovsky's like, what was he, 240 pounds or something crazy? You know, well over, was he 6'3", 6'4", whereas Johnson's a little shorter, a little bit leaner, but definitely, you know, a little bit more skilled in that sense, like when it comes to the flashy, you know, stick and puck skill. So, at the end of the day, who's going to be the better player longer term? Right now, the projections would indicate Johnson. And the trade that she had projected originally, the Hockey News, was actually going to be Slafkovsky plus something for Johnson. And that would be because of the fact that Johnson, you could say, even though he's currently in the minors, is more of an established point producer at the NHL level. And I think just the way their games are structured at this point in their young careers, he does long-term project to put up more points. Now, it doesn't mean that's going to happen. Slafkovsky may, you know, really develop into a monster here in the next couple of years and be that, you know, 30, 40 goal consistent power forward that they thought they were getting when they drafted him. Doesn't mean he's going to be a bust. That's not where people are going. But I think where a lot of us are saying is that he really seems like he needs some development and seasoning time, and I don't see any shame in putting him in the AHL to accomplish that. But Montreal seems very reluctant to do that. Earlier in the year, there was a lot of chatter, even from Montreal media, suggesting the same concept. And the Habs were like, no, he's not going to the American Hockey League. Like, I don't know why that is. But at the end of the day, that's where we're at. So I guess the question I want to pose to the audience here is, if you're the Montreal Canadiens and the Columbus Blue Jackets are interested and they offer you Johnson for Slafkovsky, or even if you had to add a third or fourth round pick or another, you know, maybe lower level prospect with Slafkovsky to get Johnson, do you do that deal? You know, are you afraid about the repercussions of the maybe admitting defeat here and, you know, maybe not making the best choice for the first overall selection? I mean, it's tough, right? You don't want to have a first overall pick. You don't want to see him go somewhere else and realize those talents you thought you were getting when you picked him. The same goes for Johnson leaving Columbus, right? You don't want to see that either. That's why some of these trades are, you know, difficult to pull off. They're risky, and sometimes when you think maybe it's a win-win, they both win, both players succeed, and it's not really a bad deal, right? You know, sort of the same concept when you saw like the Laine and Dubois trades. Like, you know, they were a little bit further along in their NHL careers. Sort of the same concept, just a smidge earlier, right? So if you're a Columbus fan, would you pull this trade off? If you're a Montreal fan, would you do this trade? Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think this concept makes sense? Is it something that either team should consider? Let me know down in the comments so we can discuss it further. Of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.